Wait, we have a light here.
Oh, what the fuck,
dude? Okay. Now you look way better. Until then, enjoy blowing me. Ha, ha, ha. He's gonna kill us! He's gonna kill us! He's gonna kill us! We're gonna die! Check it out. Yeah. Look
pathetic right now. We drink most of it.
that Airheads, Sky Vodka, Jack Daniels. Oh yes, there will be blood.
We need some cum shots and some blow pops.
Oh, titties, titties, titties!
Guys with tats look way sexier. Grade 8. Suck my dick.
Body orchard?
Yeah. They clean these titties.
Play them. They're all yours, Dahvie. Fuck yeah.
You guys came here to see.
Blood on the dance floor?
Alright, MySpace world. People don't think this is really me. Well, this is me. This is my URL. MySpace.com/Dahvie. Okay? So this is me. And this is my MySpace page. Official. Thank you. Stop faking me, motherfucker. I love you.
Man, the internet in the mid-2000s was a way different landscape than it is today. By a show of hands, who remembers MySpace? I know I do, and based on some of my analytics and within the age group that some of you land within, I think you probably do too. I remember having a MySpace, and I also remember having several MySpace band pages because back when I was younger, I was in several different bands. It's also the place where I learned to do some amateur HTML coding, as well as keeping up with several of my friends, different bands, and a place where I basically found new music almost on a constant basis. Thankfully enough, Blood on the Dance Floor was never one of those bands that ever made it onto my radar, and even if it had, it probably never would have even been one of my interests to begin with. Based on what I've listened to, it's a hot dumpster fire. I'm sorry if you guys like that music, but to me it's just absolute trash. I'm more of a mindless self-indulgence kind of guy, just my bag. I don't know what it is about people who become famous on the internet, but today the person that we're talking about is going to be no exception whatsoever. I'm of course talking about Dahvie Vanity, and by now I'm sure this name rings pretty synonymous with a certain buzzword that I'm choosing not to say. Dahvie Vanity became extremely popular through MySpace as the self-proclaimed god of hair. He was a hairstylist and also became the founding member of Blood on the Dance Floor, a crunkcore electro-pop band with extremely vulgar lyrics and crazy teased hair and a scene aesthetic that only a mother could love, or teenage girls. Unfortunately, that love was reciprocated by Dahvie Vanity. That's the reason why his name is grabbing so much attention right now. It's a severely unfortunate situation, and today I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from a few different articles that were shared through Huffpost and metalsucks.net. So with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this, and we'll follow up after everything's said and done. One Sunday night in June 2007, 14-year-old Diana Farrell sat alone in her bedroom in the dark, listening to a Christian radio show where teens discuss their troubles on air. The host, a man named Dawson McAllister, seemed kind. He spoke to callers empathetically and even gave them advice. Farrell picked up the phone and dialed in. When McAllister asked her what was wrong, she took a deep breath and told him about the man who had sexually assaulted her at home 8 days earlier. A show staffer called the police. The next evening, a patrol car appeared outside Farrell's house in Pinellas County, Florida. She was terrified. She hadn't meant to cause any problems. She just wanted someone to talk to. A shy 8th grader who was bullied throughout middle school, Farrell didn't have many friends. She spent most of her free time on the computer by herself, creating digital artwork and learning how to edit photos online. Just a few weeks earlier, she had celebrated her acceptance to high school with Farrell paced as a police officer asked questions about the man she described on the radio. She frantically explained that she didn't know his real name or how old he was. He just went by Dahvie. She'd met him a while ago on MySpace where he had a popular page as an Orlando-based hairstylist. Dahvie had told Farrell that he wanted to give her a new look, so he drove across the state to dye her hair at her house. The girl's mother, a single parent with 2 nursing jobs, had to leave for an evening shift after Dahvie arrived several hours late. Farrell performed oral sex on him that night. As the officer pressed for details about the encounter, Farrell's first sexual experience, she started to cry. The 14-year-old was confronted confused about what had happened and afraid of getting Dahvie into trouble. They'd started chatting online in the weeks leading up to her hair appointment, and he would sign off with messages declaring his love for her. They were friends, she reminded herself, and Dahvie cared about her. What would happen to him if she told the police that after finishing with her hair, he had forced himself into her mouth? Are you going to call him? You can't, Pharrell pleaded through tears. It's no big deal, she insisted. Everything was consensual, she said. After speaking to Pharrell and her mother, Captain Kurt Romanowski, a detective from the Crimes Against Children Squad of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, called 22-year-old Jesus David Torres, the man known on MySpace as Dahvie the Elite Hair God. Romanowski informed Torres that he was aware of the sexual contact with Pharrell and that her mother would not ask cops to arrest Torres if he cut off contact with her daughter. Torres claimed he didn't know how young Pharrell was, said he was sorry, and promised not to talk to her again. Lewd and lascivious battery. Sexual penetration of a child between the ages of 12 and 15 by an adult, for which Torres was briefly investigated, is a form of statutory rape and a felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Ignorance of the victim's age is not an admissible defense under Florida law, and 14-year-olds cannot legally consent to sex with 22-year-olds in the state. But police let Torres off anyways. Victim refuses cooperation with prosecution, the police report concluded. Case closed. So this is incredibly important because this is the first time that he manages to get away with it, and I believe this is probably the same reason why he has been able to continue to get away with it, because as of that particular case, there have been at least 21 women spanning 12 states and possibly 2 Canadian provinces. 14 of those accusers said Torres forced them into oral sex, and in many cases refused to stop after they struggled to breathe or their mouths bled. This is fucking hard to listen to. It's hard to read. I'm just going to move into some of the other statements. The next incident that I found noteworthy was an individual by the name of Belle from Colorado. She was 14 when she first met Dahvie and maintained contact with him all the way up until she was 18 years of age. At some point, he managed to get her by herself, and her statement reads as follows. He squeezed my breasts a lot, didn't remove his eyes from them, and just said how amazing they were. Then he pulled my top down and started putting his mouth on them. I tried to back up, but I was in a car, so I couldn't go anywhere. I started to get scared and I didn't know what to do. I pushed my arms against him a bit to sort of show him I didn't want to continue, but he kept at it. Once he was done, I pulled my shirt back up and he was pulling down his pants. He grabbed my head and started to force it down. I kept telling him that I was not comfortable with this and asked him to stop, all while trying to pull my head up. He was much stronger than me and was able to get my head down all the way. Belle froze. So he grabbed my hair and started bobbing my head up and down on him. I didn't know what to do, Belle continues. I didn't want to fight him out of fear that he would do something much worse, and I didn't want to participate and give him the idea that I wanted more. I just clenched my fists and cried. Then Dahvie used his free hand to cover my nose. I wasn't even able to breathe. I thought I was going to pass out, but I couldn't do anything about it. Once he was finished, he let go of my head and I cleaned myself up. Then he grabbed me and pulled me close to him, hugging me. He started to tell me that that's just how BDSM is, that it's about love and trust and things like that. Belle went into denial about what Dahvie had done. I truly cared about him, and even after what happened, I refused to believe that he did anything wrong. I didn't want to believe it, so I didn't. But the thoughts telling me that what he did was wrong were always there. I tried my best to ignore them. Yeah, Dahvie, I'm pretty sure BDSM only works between 2 consenting individuals, not a forceful, creepy, disgusting scenario. Up next, we have a girl by the name of Alice who also met Dahvie in 2013 when she was just 15 years old after a show, and he had convinced her and her friend to go back to a party that they were having to celebrate. The party was quaint, Alice remembers. Dahvie's then girlfriend was there and was a complete sweetheart. Video games were played, one of the guys made burgers, and Dahvie gave us full access to their merchandise room so any fans at the party could help themselves to whatever they wanted. Alice wanted merchandise, but felt uncomfortable at the thought of just taking it, so declined the offer. Dahvie, she alleges, insisted and took her to the merchandise room. Once I had some merch, he grabbed the doorknob and got super close to me and asked if I was a good student. I, being super oblivious and awkward, said not really and that I didn't apply myself in school. The two returned to the party, but later Dahvie tried again, asking her to help him with something in the garage. Naively, I agreed. Alice alleges that once they were in the garage, Vanity blocked the door again and asked if she was a good student. Alice did not respond. I had finally realized where this was going. He asked me how old I was, she says. I told him 15. He made me pinky swear that I would never tell another soul what he was about to do because he could get in big trouble. Then he forcefully kissed me. I was devastated, she continues. I had just found out that the rumors about Dahvie that I had tried so hard to defend him against were true. Alice alleges that the singer then made her perform oral sex on him. He was in total control. He wouldn't let me stand or even leave the garage until he had finished in my mouth. I had tears in my eyes most of the time we were in there. He made me clean up the makeup that had run on my face with a scarf that was on the floor of the garage. I couldn't tell you how long it had been when we got back to the party, but it felt like forever. Alice's friend, also at the party, was starting to become concerned that Alice kept disappearing with Dahvie. I assured her we were just talking, Alice says, because at the time I was still confused and trying to process everything myself. It felt like the whole night was unreal. Later, into the party, Dahvie asked her to help him pack up for his trip. You'd think at this point I wouldn't be so naive, Alice says of her 15-year-old self, but I went into his room. For 20 minutes, she and Dahvie chatted pleasantly about their home lives, their upbringings, and art. Hearing about her love of art, Dahvie offered her a job designing merchandise, an offer Alice says that he never followed through on. Then Dahvie assaulted Alice for a second time. The remaining part of her statement I'm going to omit because it's much worse than some of the other allegations, and I'm going to link off to these articles so that you can read them yourselves. I don't feel comfortable reading some of this stuff out loud. It's pretty terrible. The next alleged victim that we have of Dahvie's is a girl by the name of Evelyn, who he met in San Diego, California through a dating app when she was 18 years old. He picked her up, took her out to dinner, and encouraged her to drink wine while she was underage, and then invited her back home to a party after he had groped her. Evelyn's statement reads as follows. A few of his friends were there, as well as a pink-haired roommate, Evelyn recalls. They were all drinking, and hesitantly I joined. Dahvie's friends and I all chatted and got acquainted as I drank more than I should have. At around 1 a.m., Dahvie brought me back into his room where he provided me with marijuana. They hung out, they cuddled, they kissed. And then Vanity took things too far. All of a sudden, Vanity took his penis out of his pants and grabbed my head with the back of his hand. I was at a loss for speech. He pushed me down with all the force in his arm and I fought back. I screeched in pain, but I couldn't fight him. He was stronger than me. When he was done with me, I got my things and took an Uber home, drunk and sobbing. She says she was afraid to tell anyone about what happened. I was so young I didn't understand the severity of the situation. At the time, I didn't even realize what had happened to me and how wrong it had made me feel. The psychological scars soon began to make themselves known. It has hurt me in ways I cannot even begin to fully explain. I fear the worst from those that I trust. I hide things that have happened. I relive the event from time to time. I live with anxiety and anguish. It has affected my relationships and my anxiety surrounding men and sex. I do not live in a world where I feel safe. Dahvie proved to me that evil hides behind those most unassuming. That leads me into the last statement that I'm going to read, which is probably one of the least harmful ones, but it's still pretty detrimental and kind of shows to the mindset of how Dahvie perceives women and what he thinks of them. This statement comes from a girl by the name of Shay. The same year Ty met Dahvie, Shay had an unfortunate run-in of her own. Shay was 14 at the time, and in her words, was in love with the band. She went to a show which included, amongst other acts, Blood on the Dance Floor, and brought with her a t-shirt she wanted to have signed by as many musicians as possible. Shay remembers thinking, I got Davey Suicide and his band to sign it, so why not ask Dahvie? So she waited for him outside the venue with a crowd of other girls. When she finally got to meet Dahvie, he was happy to sign the shirt, just not the one she'd brought for signing. He decided to sign the shirt I was wearing, she said, and he grabbed my boobs in the process. Shay's passion for Blood on the Dance Floor's music prevented her from speaking out against Vanity groping her. I didn't think much of it other than, oh my god, my idol is touching me, she admits. Hindsight began to take hold a couple years later when Dahvie publicly assaulted Shay's mother during a show in support of the band's album, Bitchcraft. She was minding her own business at the bar because, in all honesty, she didn't want to be there, recalls Shay. She only came because no one else would bring me. And then they played their song, Call Me Master. Dahvie walked through the crowd with a girl on a leash, says Shay. He walked over to my mother, who was sitting at the bar, and proceeded to pour a drink all over her shirt. Then he grabbed her and tried to make out with her. She was appalled, Shay tells us. She tried to push him off. So yeah, I think that gives a pretty accurate reading on what Dahvie thinks of women and how he just continues to treat individuals. And the worst part about that is that this guy's never been convicted, he's never been to jail, he's never been charged for anything, and he's been able to get away with this for over 10 years. If these statements are all true, then it's just shocking how this entire situation has been handled. I barely even scratched the surface with some of the stuff that I've read here. I'm going to link off to the Huffpost article and the metalsucks.net article as well so that you guys can read those for yourself. I also suggest just Googling his name or the band or anything affiliated with Dahvie Vanity, and you can find a lot of information yourself. I'm surprised that more information hasn't been brought to the surface sooner and that a lot of this didn't really come out until 2019. It's mind-blowing to me. Guys, this video was kind of uncomfortable to make, and the information within it is fairly disturbing. When you compare this to something like Onision, I feel like this is far more detrimental. So if you could do me a favor, consider subscribing to the channel. It's something like 61.9% of you are unsubbed but still watch my content, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider sticking around long term. Make sure to ding that notification bell and turn on all post notifications. Consider following me on Twitter and other social medias that will be listed below. Leave me a comment down in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Give it a thumbs down if you didn't, but make sure you click that thumbs down twice. That way I know you really didn't like it. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this one, and I'll see you in the next video.